Welcome to this today's stream. We got live from Austria. We got IlSinistero. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm IlSinistero. I'm from Austria, 42. I'm a leftist. Some of you might already know me from the chats of Lunaoi or Noncompete. And on Twitter, I'm also at IlSinistero. And yeah, I call myself an ancom, but I'm not very dogmatic about it. So there are things I agree on with MLs, and yeah, that about me.
Cool. So I hope you hear everything nice now. Everybody in the chat. Yes, we'll need to leave soon, but we'll watch the stream later. Okay, no worries. I'm recording for YouTube later, and we have VOD on Twitch as well. So we're going to talk today about the rise of fascism in Europe, in particular, and and in our countries in particular, and in Europe in general. So, if how do you see it, like, overall in general? What's your general impression about it?
Well, I can see, it's not full-blown out fascism, but you can see the rise in the tendencies of fascism. And especially in my country, or Austria is neighbor country of Hungary. And yeah, in Hungary, it's really bad.
It is really bad in Hungary, and your country is very close to Hungary, so you got like borders with them, so it's probably every day in the news all day, right?
Yes, that of course. And with our current chancellor, we have Sebastian Kurz. He's kind of the Austrian Trump, you can say. He's very young. He's only 34 years old. And he really took over the Austrian People's Party, the ÖVP, like Trump did with the Republican Party in the US. So when he came into power, he called it the New People's Party, and the former, like every party in every country has a color designated to them. And for the People's Party in Austria, it was always the black color. And now it's the turquoise color. So, and yeah, everybody has to fall in line. He politically murdered all the former big heads in the People's Party, and yeah, now he's the big man there.
That's fucked up. There's always this pattern: a strong man in a Europe in crisis, right, or a country in crisis, or a society in crisis, caused by the same capitalists who are actually, creating the crisis, and at the orders of those evil people.
Yes, and of course, he's his big friend with big business and all that. It's the usual pattern you can see when these kind of people come to power.
Definitely, there are like a lot of, and then there's like the new fascism pretends to be new, but there's actually nothing new. Like it tries to, it's more of a rebranding or a history repeating itself as a farce, but it's gonna want to repeat itself as a tragedy more than anything if we don't.
I really like what Bo of the Fifth Column always says. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, and
yeah,
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, that's a common thing that I heard it around too. It's kind of rhymes, and this rhyme is really ugly. I'm just saying,
Yes, it is.
So yeah, okay. I'm gonna show you more. That's what I found. I got my bookmarks over here. Let me see if you can see them properly. Hopefully, let me make them a little bit bigger. So something like that. Okay, this is something I just found. Okay, it's a little bit too much. Let me back it up a little. There you go. There you go. So these are the remains of the first. Spain is a very special country in a way that it never stopped being Francoist, even since Franco took over. There are many historical facts, that the elites put Franco in power after a conspiracy since the Second Republic took place. So there were, all the powers that be were conspiring to bring the Republic to the ground and put some powerful men at their behest. And that's more or less what happened. And there are still people being buried after, the famous quote-unquote civil war. There was not a war, but an extermination war carried out by the fascists after a failed coup d'etat, which is probably something you heard me say around here a few times. And they found the remains of the first woman mayor in Spain. Her name was María Domínguez, and she was in charge of the city of Gallur in Zaragoza, Gallur actually, and she was murdered by fascists in 1936. So she wrote, her quote was, "I pledge my life to the Republic, and I wouldn't faint even when I get disappointed." So they found her remains a few days ago, March 2nd. So also our fascists are very active. They're vandalizing all kinds of feminists. They get our brand of fascism gets very, very triggered with feminism. They really don't like feminism.
Like they all do.
So they vandalized this mural dedicated to big women, María Zambrano, Simone de Beauvoir. And that's something that happened on March the 5th, again, not so long ago. The person who tweets it, but it is very showing. It is very telling. There being many many acts of vandalism against murals, against statues, against everything that reminds them of the Second Republic, like or feminism, basically. They've been vandalizing homages to the victims of Francoism. They've been vandalizing all kinds of anything that reminds them that there was a big fuck up and it was their fault, because they want to go back. So Negative Land is telling us about the accusations against Roimán Rodriguez. No, I'm gonna check it out later, and we can go through it. Oh, first time in the stream. Welcome, Hassania. Found you from Spanish leftist videos. I'm glad you appreciate them. So I found also there's been many. This is from the newspaper El Salto, which is it's a funny story, I could tell you, because they're actually the best some of the best independent media in Spain right now, and the police is basically brutalizing the protester for public health care, to defend public health care. Why they make a protective detail around the fascist counter protesters. They protect the fascists and they beat the shit out of them. So the fascists are on the left of the picture.
Policía contra manifestantes.
Yeah, shit is bad. And there's a I think it's a particularity of the Spanish. It's a particularity of the Spanish way of things, in the way that there are like the neo-Nazi on your nose type of characters, but there's also the police charges always against people from the same side and gets friendly always with the people from the same side. This is one of the examples, like police people in a fascist type of bar. And these are cops, as you can see. So, yeah, these are police officers in uniform hanging out in the pro-fascist bar in Madrid while on duty, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I sent you a picture on Twitter so that we can share some things. I guess that's the best way we can do it at the moment.
Yeah. Show me a little bit. Let me see. I gotta back it up a little bit. There you go. Yeah. Okay. This
picture here, what we have there is, it was one of these COVID demonstrations, all the people
COVID denial. Yeah.
Uniting, all the people who don't believe in COVID, and they were demonstrating, and there's a big mix-up with the far right, because a lot of these demonstrations are started by right-wing figures. And as you might know that in Austria and in Germany too, the Hitler salute is against the law. And here you nicely can see the police
looking the other way. Yeah,
looking the other way. And in behind that one guy with the mask on, the bald guy, he's even a guy from the, what literally translates to defenders of the Constitution. That's a law enforcement agency that's mainly looking on far right, far left extremist groups who are against democracy and all that, and nobody gives an F. It's It
is chilling. It is really chilling. How the cops are always friends with the fascists, and that's a problem that we have in our states. The way I see it, and at least in your countries you have like written in law that the Nazi salute is forbidden. In Spain, it's even encouraged. That's a problem.
That's really a problem, yeah.
This is like an absolute breeding ground for fascists to thrive. Basically, this country, this shithole country, in which I was born, owned by. So yeah, there's these fucking Nazis there, doing whatever they want.
But unfortunately, it's not that much better in Austria here, because I think all of you know the identitarian movement. And one of its big figureheads, Martin Sellner, he's an Austrian. So, and he's on these anti-COVID demos. He's often there. So,
there's a link between COVID denial, quacks, and absolute, Nazis, like neo-Nazis, right? There's a link there between the neo-fascists and the COVID denial, quacks, absolute, not very stable people. They have the best people.
You could see this for long, that this whole esoteric scene always had a big part of the far right in it. So
yeah,
maybe it's because the old Nazis, as you might know, that Himmler, he was also he believed in all these these fairy tales of old kings and all that stuff. So I guess that's some heritage of that.
I think that's something that's very telling of them. They go to fantasy lands to make their ideology. It's a fake, absolutely fake ideology. Fake ass ideology of neo-fascism, in which you need to go to a fake fantasy land to get a narrative going, to make it to make it happen. And that's one of the things. They need their imagery. Like if you look at this bar, it's all covered with the flag of Spain, which is inherited of the Francoist regime, with not much change. And if you see, there's in the middle of the picture, that's a fucking eagle. So that's the Francoist flag. But on the right inside of the bar, you can see that there's the Flanders, Tercios de Flanders thing, which was another ancient flag they like to call, to the times of yore, to make it appealing, to make it like a fantasy of old times and so on. And the tweet says like it's really bad. It's bad enough that there's a fascist bar in Madrid, which is full of Francoist symbology, but it's even worse that amongst their loyal customers there are police officers. Fascism is growing. Fascism is not hiding. And I think one of the things that I think Europe didn't do a very good job of cleaning up their fascists.
They didn't.
Yeah, we had like an infestation, right? They were never gone.
Germany after the war had what was called the denazification. And in Germany, it wasn't perfect, but it was much, much better done than in Austria.
Yeah. Yeah. And there in Austria, there's a lot of, Nazis from the past, and they've been able to pass the torch to these new, younger people, who should know better, but they don't. And, I think there's a problem. But I think one of the biggest problems that I see is that they're really covered in the media. They're really, 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 really covered in the media. Like we had this viral, quote unquote, viral video from this character here, this woman here, who is supposed to show like I'm a neutral, person looking for justice. So here comes this tweet, says phase 2 of the whitening of fascism in the big media groups. And there's this famous anchor guy, Risto Mejide, from the mainstream TV, who is interviewing this motherfucker here, the woman here with the ugly ass glasses, who is actually a member of the Falange, of the Spanish Falange, basically. And they made like a pretend viral video, who was supposed to go viral because of itself, but it was heavily astroturfed by dark money and, of course, by the mainstream media, who picked it up right away, criticizing the government because we were giving in to whatever, saying whatever you wanted to say about the whatever you wanted to do about the pandemic, and we wore the mask, we distanced, we stayed at home, we closed and then but we need a true leader, a true captain. And it was like, motherfucker, you're looking for you're appealing for a fascist leader. And of course, when you look her up, and you see she's a member of Falange, and still, these motherfuckers, they gave her a lot of coverage. And this is Radio Ya, which is like it used to be like a Francoist newspaper, and it's still a Francoist newspaper that is in the mainstream media. They have like big powers. One of the things of the Spanish media that is like very telling is like Spanish media is not economically viable, mainstream media anymore. But they still keep going, not because they get a lot of advertising, whatever, but because they're being astroturfed by lobbies, and that's a big thing. So yeah, she's from this, and this other woman, the blonde one. Yeah, again, they're being taken care of by the media. There they are. This is the link. Like she is. Along with Radio Ya, with this other guy who is actually with the arrows and the whatever this was. I don't never remember the word for this shit. But this is a symbol of the Falange. It means Y and F, which is Isabel and Fernando. And here's the Francoist flags and everything. So they're basically voicing a lot of fascists. And yeah. And this is a demonstration in Madrid couple of Saturdays ago, and they were protesting. It was allowed. One of the things that is very telling again, this blonde woman doing the Roman salute, which is absolutely legal in Spain. You remember what I told you before. And they're anti-communists. and they're doing the Roman salute. It's all of the Nazis, which is not that many, but they're there, and they're getting brave. Basically, they used to hide, they used to go all sneaky.
Yeah, anti-communism usually is just another word for being on the right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is awful. This is awful. So this blonde woman, she got a lot of coverage on the mainstream media as well. And she got a lot of interviews and everything because she's cute, and it's like, fuck that shit. She's a fucking Nazi. She should be in a correctional facility, not roaming free on the streets, which is fucked up. This is Madrid last Saturday. This is from February 15, so tens of Nazis gathered to homage Nazism and homage the Blue Division, which is something that happened during World War II, which Franco sent troops of volunteers and not so volunteers. They sent a division to fight with Hitler, basically, and they were saying things like the Jew is the guilty one, the enemy, and it's gonna be itself. So fascism is joy, which is absolute. But at the same time, where this was happening, the thing on the left was happening as well, which is the incarceration of Pablo Hasél, who is a rapper, who for his lyrics he was sent to prison. For writing lyrics about, I've done a stream about it not long ago when it happened.
So it's still against the law to insult the king and all that in Spain.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah,
they made it illegal to insult the king, basically. So when you mess with the king, and when you mess with the police, and when you mess with the system, because Pablo Hasél he's a communist from the Communist Party, the reconstituted Communist Party of Spain, which is like people who split from the Communist Party when the Communist Party was doing, the whole thing with the transition and getting into the institutions that were evidently post-Francoist, and they wanted nothing to do with that because they wanted to follow like a revolutionary path, and they split from there. They were related to the Grapo and some other, they call them terrorists. I would say, terrorist is a very loaded term, but, basically he was sent to jail because of to prison, actually, because of his opinion. And he on the left was being sentenced to prison because of his opinion, and she on the right, she was doing the Roman salute and talking shit about the Jewish people. Just freely and with permission from the government, which is funny because now the 8th of March is it's right around the corner, and if it isn't already, 6, a couple of days from now is going to be the 8th of March, and in Madrid they have forbidden all the protest of the 8th of March, taking as an excuse the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So there's so I would say fascists have always been the same. They've always been the same people, the same doofuses, the same awful people. And these are the protests of citizens' protests against Spanish state's imprisonment of Catalan rapper Pablo Hasél for crimes of expression, which is speech. They wouldn't bat an eyelid in Ireland, but the EU is not happening. In Russia, it's not happening. Yeah. It's things, that don't happen in those supposedly, very, very authoritarian states are happening in Spain. Spain is a fucking joke of a country. It's awful. So I don't know. There were massive protests, and there was a lot of repression, and people got angry. So again, more about the neo-Nazi protest authorized by the government. It's like, you can march, and look at that.
The thing is that these conservative or neoliberal governments, like it always was, they know that the Nazis are no danger to their way of living, while the left is. And So you can see these different measurements they take against the right and the left.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I don't know. It is really bad. To be honest, it is really bad. It is really bad. So yeah, we're champions of the world in Spain. Artist in prison in 2019, and Spain got the record with 14 artists after Iran, Turkey, Myanmar, Egypt, China, and Russia.
Nice. So what a lot of people don't know that here in meanwhile it all has mixed up. But in Austria we had these two strains of fascism. First was, of course, what everybody knows about, this German kind of fascism, the Nazism. But also then we had the Austrofascism that had its roots in the 1930s and all that. And the leader in the 30s of the People's Party of Austria, he started those Austrofascism, and it was quite the same as the German thing. The only big difference was that the Austrofascists, they wanted to be that Austria, it's its own state, while the Nazis, they wanted to be a part of Germany.
Yeah.
And it was only a few years ago that the Austrian People's Party, like I said, our chancellor is from the party, until they took away the bust of those former Austro-fascist leader who was called Dollfuss. And yeah, it's also a bad heritage they have. And the Austrian Freedom Party, that's the far-right party, it was founded by Nazis.
Yeah. But just they had another brand of fascism. One of the things, that pisses me off is how the media covers, there are neo-fascisms happening, and because they're not exactly the brand that happened in the 1930s, they don't see them as fascism. But they
don't have the brown shirts. They don't have, or if you talk about right-wingers, they are not all bald today and have their Doc Martens on and so. But these, like Martin Sellner, they are like hipsters.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the legal framework and the political consensus is giving them plausible deniability, and they're finding a way to thrive in there. And one of the things that I think it's important for us in Europe or anywhere in the world, is just not to give them that space, not to to out them at every turn and say that's a fucking fascist. It's a new brand of fascism, yes, but it's no less fascism than the old brands. So that's one of the things that we need to oppose, and to see how it happens in our countries. Like how would you go about facing the rise of fascism in Austria, for example? Who would you pick up? How would you expose them?
Well, that's hard to say. It's the big problem in Austria was always when there was a crisis or so, Austria always turned to the right. In Germany you have leftist parties and all that, but in Austria we never had that really. Yeah, and now our current government. It's a coalition government. It's the conservatives with the Green Party, but yeah, the Green Party sold its soul. Really, see, it's bad. They say yes to everything that the People's Party wants to, and at the moment, the only real opposition parties we have here, one is called Der Wandel, that means the change, and the Austrian Communist Party, but both are so small. I mean, together they have maybe 3 or 4% of the vote.
Yeah, but if they're hiding in that political consensus, maybe that is that political consensus that you have to challenge in a way, right? Like what are the ideas behind it? Why is Austria so right wing? What's keeping them from progress, basically?
That's really a good question. I ask myself a lot. Yeah, I think one of the biggest fears of the Austrian is the big bad migrants, and with the refugee crisis of 2015, where also Austria took quite a lot of refugees. Now, what right-wing parties say, it's often not again like in 2015. So we don't want to do that again, so that we take in that much of immigrants. And
so they're feeding on fear, but there has to be a way to challenge that. Like migrants and refugees, they can actually get jobs and get better. I mean, what's in the way for what's in the way for migrants to get incorporated and being productive people in the society is the economic system, not the migrants themselves.
Yeah, but how paradox the whole situation here in Austria is. I have a nice little example for you. Not this government, but the government we had before, that was a coalition of the Austrian People's Party and the Freedom Party, the far-right party. And as you might know, there was this big Ibiza scandal where it all ended, where the leader of the far-right party on Ibiza met a fake niece of a Russian oligarch. And yeah, he tried to sell the whole republic to her. He was talking about that this Russian oligarch should buy the biggest newspaper in Austria, so that the far-right party, got presented better and all that. And in exchange, he will give them some government infrastructure programs and all that. And after that scandal, the former government ended, and we got the government we now have. But the former government, they implemented the 12-hour workday. And it's as bad as it sounds.
Yeah.
And you would think, if you do that in France, the streets would burn.
Yeah.
But here in Austria, a lot of people defended it. Working people defended the 12-hour workday. And so maybe that's the reason, as you know, I want to move away from Austria, because I really don't understand the people here.
Yeah, but how can they make that work? How can they make that work? What was the message that seduced all those working class people to defend the 12-hour day? How
it has a lot to do with this old picture of work ethics. You have to work hard, you have to work 40 hours a week, or otherwise the whole system will break down. And Austrians are quick to believe that you have to save more money, we can't afford all the social programs. They believe that immediately.
But it's the typical switcheroo. It's like they have the same people telling people to work 12 hours a day, and the same people are telling that the migrants are stealing people's jobs. It's like, what the fuck? They're the same. What absolute campaign can make people not connect those two dots immediately?
Here we have the connection you before mentioned. It has, of course, a lot to do with the media, because a lot of media here in Austria also isn't viable without sponsoring from the state. And our biggest newspaper, the Kronenzeitung, means the ground newspaper, it's really one of a kind in the world, because its reach. It's a boulevard newspaper like the Bild in Germany or the Sun in the UK, but it has a reach. It's over half of Austrians read that newspaper, and that newspaper for decades made politics in Austria. Because if you're a politician and this one newspaper doesn't like you, it's really hard that you get into power, because they ran one campaign after another against you, and most of the people who they don't like are dead on arrival. So it's really bad, the whole media scene here in Austria.
Yeah, but how about grassroots organizations? How about independent communication? You know, there are many things that, you know, we know that the mainstream media and the mainstream scene is going to be ghoulish. Like, of course it's going to be ghoulish, but you got to counter it with some other alternative media, right?
We have that, of course. There are newspapers like the Falter or Zack Zack and all that. But the problem is the reach of these newspapers. You know, the big ones, and even the Twitter scene in Austria is pretty small, you can say. Yeah, it's really a conservative country, this whole thing here, and it's. Yeah, like I said, I sometimes really don't understand it myself. And it's good that there are people working against the whole situation, but it's getting harder and harder. Because one thing we also had to our former government, and that was the People's Party with the far right. And what they did, our Minister of Interior was from the far right party. And he recruited a lot of the police force we have today from far-right circles. So police in general is more on the side of the right, but now it's even worse.
Yeah. And how was that even allowed? Like, it should be like no matter who's the minister, you know? You're not supposed to have Nazis picked up, you know, for the police force. Like, of course, you know, theoretically you don't, but they managed to do it. I mean, the Spanish police is the same, and I wanted to show you, something actually, like, you know, the thing with the migrants, you know, you know this standoff with Marine Macron, Marine Le Pen and the French Minister of Interior, calling her soft when attacking Islam. It's like he one-upped the most far-right racist politician in France as a Minister of Interior in office. Marine Macron, yeah, kind of. It was a slip of the tongue, a Freudian slip, maybe. But, you know, a strong attack to the French values and whatnot, you know, total freedom of religion. You got to have the far-right politician defending against the sitting Minister of Interior, you know, the diversity of a country. What's going on? Is fascism so ingrained in our institutions and our public life?
I think that's one thing you also can see around the world, that a lot of conservative parties, they are coming up with far-right talking points. It was in the US with the Republican Party, and it's also here in Austria. You can see it. It seems it's a zeitgeist. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I get one of the things, you know, and it's probably many factors, but I think these people are getting all mask off, you know, because they're basically, they got brave since Trump got elected back in the US, and I think that wave is coming to Europe now, and they've been mounting up, but you know,
the Trump election surely gave a big push to all these right wingers. Yeah,
I think most of the normie business type politicians who didn't mess very much in bigotry because they had good business anyway, you know. I think that was one of the things that made them go like, mask off, you know, we're gonna go full bigot. It seems to work. It's good for business, so let's do it, right? Do you think that kind of reinforces the discourse in this case?
It surely does, and especially also the media, you can see, because when Trump was president in the US, you know, the media circle, and they always had to write something about, and I think they licked some blood about that.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that and going back, you know, to the U.S. empire is the hand of Steve Bannon, who's been organizing fascist parties all over Europe. So maybe he's been organizing the strategies for these people. So I'm seeing like a lot of Trumpy clones springing up all over Europe, like like mushrooms, if you know what I mean.
That's something we on the left are really behind, these all interconnections worldwide, because on the far right you can see it. It's really extreme. Back to Martin Sellner of the identitarian movement. I mean, he's married to Brittany Pettibone, the American fascist woman.
Yeah.
And yeah, they all have their networks around the world.
Yeah. I think most of the new fascism has branches that are imported from the United States. I think it's all the garbage from the United States is coming to Europe. It's coming back like a boomerang. Like we had the OG back in the day, and when the OG faded away, it seems to have thrived. Spread its awful seeds in the other continent, and coming back to us right now with a vengeance, I suppose, and as a new mutation of this. Absolute
unfortunately,
stink.
that happened with most of the things. What happened in the US happens in Europe with the delay of a couple of years, maybe. It's right, fascism, neoliberalism. You can see it in all these things.
Yeah. So the question remains: is how do we stop this shit? How do we stop it? We need to stop it. We need to say that this is not acceptable in Europe, and this is not acceptable anywhere in the world, of course. But this is not acceptable in my country, in my locality. This is not acceptable, right? How do you know?
Yeah, one thing I recognized, and that gives me a little bit of hope, is that you never should underestimate the self-destruction powers of the far right. Because here in Austria, when the far right party was in a coalition, they always blew it up themselves. And at the moment, like I said, the conservative parties around the world, they take a lot of those far-right talking points, and so did the Austrian People Party. And at the moment, with the whole COVID crisis and the bad handling of it here in Austria, polls show that he's going down. Sebastian Kurz, our current chancellor, yeah, it's nearly not enough at the moment, because he's still at about 35-36% or so. But there's a little movement in it, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, don't you feel a little bit like before the whole COVID thing, the struggle was mostly in the street, making counter protests and organizing and making projects that would illusion people, would have people enthusiastic about alternative projects, dual power structures and whatnot. And right now, everybody's gone to lockdown, and everybody's in this collective trauma of COVID-19 pandemic bullshit. And it seems like they're on the one hand, we have like capitalists saying, let's not have a crisis go to waste. Let's not have a crisis go. But we have also the fascists saying, let's not have the crisis go to waste, and deploying their narratives. And right now, the internet has become a little bit of a massive stage, because people don't do that much on the real world anymore. So and one of the problems that I see is that they do have the money, the resources to buy ads, to buy those bots that subscribe to your channels by the thousands that you can buy in China and whatnot. They can gather relevance very quickly. But how do you counter that message? How do you
I mean, here it's that Sebastian Kurz, he has a big media presence on the online media. But in the last few weeks, it was for the first time that he felt big opposition there. Because usually it's all just praising him and all that. But now more and more people go into his social media and tell him that he sucks and all that. So it's on the move, but of course it's slowly. And as often, I hope it's not too little too late.
Yeah, me too. Like I see, there's In Spain, we have this thing we call cuñados. That's why one of the reasons why I named my channel like that. Cuñado, it literally translates to brother-in-law, but it's, that family member that shows up at the family dinner, talks very loud, doesn't know shit what he's talking about, right? So there's a lot of those in Spain. Spain has been deteriorating culturally, and the Spanish life has been being polarized and isolated. People do less things together than ever, and everybody's more individualistic, more selfish, and more disinformed. And a lot of people get their information diet via TV, and TV stations in Spain are absolutely ghoulish. They're terrible. They're awful. Even the supposedly progressive one is absolutely terrible. One of the things, but I'm gonna try not to digress too much. But the thing is, I think all of this huge pool of cuñados, of deactivated lumpen people, are being brought by are being seduced by the fake narratives of fascism, basically. So how do we seduce them the other way? When we bring a lot of reason to the table, we don't bring a lot of seduction to the table, and I think that's on us. We should be way more seductive. We should be more without any detriment to having a good academic or well-constructed path towards fixing the problems of our societies. But how can we become more seductive to diffuse that bullshit of fascism and call it by the absolute bullshit that it is? How can we do that? Do you have any ideas? I don't know.
I think it has a lot to do with direct action, because the prejudice against the left is quite huge, especially here in Austria, and I think it's not that much different in Spain. And yeah, you can just go out, help people who need help, and maybe trying to pull them to your side. That's really the only way. And of course, you have to show up when there are demonstrations and all that. Here in Austria, I mean, it's because of the country. I mean, it's a small country, 8.5 million people, and the biggest city is Vienna with about 2 million people. So most things that happen when it comes to demonstrations and so, they happen in Vienna, because the second biggest city is Graz, and it has 350,000 people, so it's much, much smaller already, and all the other cities are even smaller. So it's all centered around Vienna, and I have to give a big shout out here to the Vienna Antifa. They are really doing a good job.
There you go. Direct action. It was. Did you have, like, during the pandemic, those mutual aid networks? Here in Spain, we had like mutual aid networks. We people went out, did groceries for people who couldn't get out of the house, and brought them groceries, and did a lot of mutual aid. Attending. Mostly people who live alone, who are elderly, who don't have like a lot of means, who are poor. And we're just delivering food and groceries and whatever they needed while we were on lockdown. Did that happen in Austria?
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course we have these kind of supermarkets for people with low income and all that, and people who care about the homeless and all that. That of course happened, and that's a good thing. And
yeah, we had like a very pathetic attempt to copy that on behalf of the fascists. Back in the day, talking about 20 years ago, we had like a bunch of Nazi squatters. They were fascist squatters who had this thing called the Hogar Social, the social home. They were trying to do mutual aid only for Spaniards, only Spanish people. So not for migrants, but we're doing mutual aid for the poor who happen to have a Spanish ID.
Yeah, I heard of such things from Germany in the past too. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's an easy way for them, especially when it comes to young, poor guys, in teenagers and all that. Yeah. You give them a company, you give them food and all that, and pull them to your side. It's the old game.
These motherfuckers, though, they really they failed miserably. Basically, they failed. They really crashed their project. But yeah, they gave it a shot. You know, the populism of the right, of the far right. It is very, very dangerous. Yeah. But when we offer mutual aid from the left, I think our mutual aid is more sincere, and I hope, you know, that it comes through as better. I don't know. I would, you know, encourage to everyone who's seeing this. You know,
it's more sincere, and that's the reason why leftists keep doing it. I mean, on the right, it's basically against their whole ideology to do such things. Yeah, and so sooner or later they end it. But I mean, Hitler in the beginning, he was the same. He gave the German people work and all that. Yeah, so he was seen as this big savior.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, yeah, as you say, mutual aid is fantastic. I'm really concerned about the quote unquote culture war here on the internet. All of those far right enablers right now out on the social networks and everything, because their Discord is easy. They offer simple solutions for complex problems, and people buy it because people are desperate. Of course, you know, I don't know. Off the top of my head, you know, outing them as the actual shills that they are, as the actual fake that they are, that would be something positive, I suppose. But it is very difficult to fight this normalization of the far right now on the mainstream media, on the social, the mainstream society.
But on the other hand, you have to see I think there's a little positivity in it, because if you ask me, let's say 5 years ago, about this big showing of the online left, I would never have thought it was possible. Yeah, and today you can see there are more and more leftists online. So
yeah,
and I mean, real leftists, not sock dams. So real people who are communists, anarchists, and all that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward for you to start your channel, to watch your videos.
Yeah, it will be coming. It will be coming. But, you know, I got a little medical issue at the moment, and so it has to
You're going to
wait.
fix it. You're going to fix it in enough time. I'm looking forward to see your stuff, man.
So you have to pray that the Austrian government is handling this whole COVID thing a little bit better, because at the moment it's really crazy. They're opening up all and everything, and cases are on the rise. And with the vaccination, we're so far behind it. It's ridiculous.
It's profit before people, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the common points that I think one of the things that we need to beat up in terms of information, you know, for the people. The capitalism is heavily linked with fascist movements, because fascist movements are, you know, the dogs that capitalists bring out when capitalism is in absolute crisis, when it's, you know, falling down, spiraling down into absolute collapse, which is about to happen. It's happening, where it's ongoing. The collapse of capitalism is happening, and the thing is, what do we do after that? It's complicated, but I think that's a good, you know, way to oppose fascism in an information level. Of course, nothing beats up some good old direct action. So I'm just saying, but
yeah,
but we gotta do everything. I believe strongly in diversity of tactics. You know, whatever you're good at opposing fascism with it, do it.
There's one thing I don't have an answer to, so maybe you have, and that's the thing is that you can see it all around the world. If fascists are in power and they fuck up, everybody it's doesn't care much about it. But if a leftist, even if it's just a sock dam, does one single bad thing, you know, all the media is on them, and it's really bad. So I really don't know how we should change that.
I think that it's a multi-pronged problem, I would say, because on the one hand, you know, whoever gets in the power in the system of the states that exist right now as they are, whoever is elected, it's going to be an aesthetic change, because most of the institutions that function the way they function, they're going to keep functioning the way they function, and their priority are not going to be serving the people ever, but controlling the people, which is much different. I think that the root of the problem, it could be at the model of state that we live in, a state that is more oriented towards protecting property, private property, from and power structures from those who are holding power, the big families who are holding power, and everybody who plays ball to that shit. So in a way, it doesn't matter if you're like a super lefty, super progressive people who manage to be electorally voted into office, because your office is not going to hold power without dominating the other structures that are not electable. So, and if they make mistakes, I would, you can try things out and see that things work or don't work. By the way, hola Johnny Desu. And you can try things and see if they work or don't work. But and I think there's a big but, and I cannot lie. And it's that, you can try stuff, but these power structures, they need to be reformed, or even, I would say, destroyed and reconstructed from scratch, because they're too heavily contaminated by authoritarianism and authoritarian values and interests that have nothing to do with democracy, where the demos doesn't hold any kind of kratos. So, in a way, you can try policies and see if they work and if they don't work, but the wiggle room that an electoral power has, like let's say a political party has when they elected in office, it's very narrow, and it's very, so they can try things and they can propose things and not be let do those things by other interests. Like, for instance, so theoretically, we have a progressive government in Spain, and we have Unidas Podemos, who is supposedly the party that is going to reform, yada yada yada. But it's absolute air. Like when it comes down to the grit of the matter, when we found out that our king is we found out, we knew this for decades. But when the matter came to court that our king, our former king now, who has abdicated into his son, but is still considered rey emerito, king emeritus, whatever, and they were put in power, and nobody dares to question the institution of the monarchy, for instance. And the monarchy is not elected by anyone, but from the monarchy stem a lot of judicial power, a lot of police and military power that is never elected. And all of those people who are on the bandwagon of these monarchs, or these big economic powers, even, we could talk about the Spanish stock exchange and all the big companies, construction companies and whatnot. And there are a lot of multinational corporations who are not going to let any progressive candidate in an bourgeois electoral system do significant reforms.
I think there are two big things that totally play into this. And one, of course, is that the Overton window moved further and further to the right over the last decades. And
thank you, mainstream media, right?
And the second thing is corruption. It's a really big problem.
Yep. And corruption as a way of governance, in a way that many ideologies that are accepted right now justify corruption as something legal, good, and natural and necessary. It's not that corruption is something that happens because some bad apples. It is that corruption happens because they can, because they're entitled to it, because that's a business model, and because that's acceptable.
Here in Austria, maybe you heard or read about it in the newspapers. So a couple of weeks ago, our finance minister had his home raided because he, maybe corruption, so you can't say it, or they sue you. And with the Novomatic, that's a big gambling company. And yeah, it's really ridiculous what's happening there, because in the last 20 years we always had finance ministers from the Austrian People's Parties, and of all these finance ministers, 4 had raided their homes. So in every government, you can say, once the finance minister's home got raided by the police. And the crazy thing is, now the story is that when his home got raided, he first called his wife, and his wife took the child and his laptop and went on a walk so that they couldn't find his laptop he had at home.
Motherfucker. Motherfucker. Yeah. Well, I mean, our conservative party, they registered their whole headquarters in Madrid, and they destroyed several hard drives with a hammer.
That was also a thing that happened here in Austria. The big scandal of the shreddering of the hard drives. And there's a big inquiry in this whole thing, and our minister, or a finance minister, he first said he can't remember if he had a laptop and all that, and it's just ridiculous.
One of the things that I find, like, going back to fascism, is that it's so ingrained, like the authoritarianism is so ingrained in our quote-unquote democracies. Like, the power of the state is unquestionable and unaccountable. And they made sure that it's become like that. They really prize themselves into using the word democracy over and over and over again, because you can vote bourgeois A or bourgeois B every 4 years into office, but you don't vote for many of the most powerful people who are influencing right now the states all over Europe and whatever, United States, Australia, New Zealand,
Yeah. I mean, as an anarchist, of course, I'm totally for direct democracy and all that things. But at the moment, direct democracy would be a really mixed bag. And here we are back to the media, because, this disinformation of the media and all that is so strong that at the moment, if here in Austria, we had direct democracy, I'm pretty sure a lot of really, really bad laws would come into power.
Of course. Because you can implement direct democracy upon people who are educated into being responsible in the first place.
Absolutely.
We cannot have proper political structures without a cohesive, without a proper social tissue around it. And right now, everybody's atomized. Everybody's educated, raised. We are all raised as fucking consumers. We are raised as consumers. And consumers are the most malleable demographic to target for fascism.
And it's so easy to play people against each other at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. But
it's either native people against the immigrants, or the poor against the middle class, and the rich and the powerful, they are happy about it.
The concept of competition. There's not enough for everybody, so everybody go and stab whoever you need to stab just to get away with it, and that's not cool. That's not cool. That's really not cool. And that's one of the things, that need to change over time. And the worst thing of all is that we're running out of time right now. We're
with climate change and all that.
Yeah, like 5-6 years away from climate change being irreversible, and then we were going full Mad Max or whatever. So, I think, one of the things that I'm most scared of, more than the rise of fascism, which is scary enough, is that the fucking ANCAPs, they get what they want. An absolute collapse of the structures around us, and a scarcity of everything, and a climate crisis that is going to make this COVID crisis look like a joke. And then they're going to get their fucking Mad Max. They always wanted.
I mean, if you heard that about in the US about Nevada, I mean, the ANCAPs, they are already a step further. They want to bring back those corporate towns.
Yeah, but nobody cares about Nevada. Nevada is it's Las Vegas and a lot of wells.
Yeah, but I mean, it's really ridiculous
hear
if you
you.
think that a company buys a big, a big batch of land, and they invest there, and then they are the ones who make the laws for that county.
Yeah, no, it's happening online already. Like big corporations like YouTube and Twitter and Twitch and whatever, Amazon, they make their own laws as well, and in the way that we interact socially with each other, and we're chasing algorithms like absolute nerds. You know, algorithms are ruling us online. So, and those are directed by private corporations. They decide who gets who gets views, who gets their messages, who gets attention, who doesn't get attention. Basically, if we're here, it's because of mutual aid, not because of the freaking algorithm. The algorithm is not going to do anything to lift us up. So, there's an author called Carlos Taibo in Spain, fantastic author, who has this was one of the proponents of this theory of the collapse, that our system as it is going to collapse. It is collapsing already. Like in a way that the economic structures are collapsing, the social structures are incredibly weak, so they're going to collapse as well. But also, the productive structures are going to collapse because of lack of the unsustainability of the current models, in which, we're going to run out of basically fossil fuels. We're going to run out of many basic materials in which our industries rely on right now. And then there's going to be a huge crisis.
One of the biggest changes is that we are slowly running out of things like phosphorus that's needed for artificial nutrients for plants and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's really bad.
So we're gonna have to rely on permaculture, and we're gonna have to rely on small communities. We're gonna need to leave the cities. To be honest, I'm looking forward to it. I hate big cities. I fucking hate them. I'd love to live in a small town and have a community and talk to my neighbors and hang out and working as little as possible, and fuck that shit.
Well,
not paying a shit ton for an apartment or whatever,
I'm the opposite. I'm at the moment I'm living more on the countryside, and I hate it. It's so boring here. I can tell you.
Shit, I would kill to get bored. I would kill to get bored with my guitar and my bass,
And the problem is that prices here for rent and all that are not much cheaper than in the city.
That's fucked up. It's like, no, lower the prices for rent. Fuck that shit. Fuck that noise. Landlords can suck it. Landlords are.
I mean, here where I live, it's really extreme because it's a tourist area and all that, and so prices are generally a little higher than in other parts of the country. But yeah, I mean, here for an apartment of, let's say, 45, 50 square meters, under 600 euros, you can't find anything.
Shit, 600. Fuck. But the wages are a little bit higher than here in Spain, right?
I think the average income here is about 1,500 or so.
1,500 to 1,000 euros, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's more doable. I mean, here in Spain, they're charging that amount with average 1,900 and 1,000 euros of income. So that's even more fucked up. But anyway, they're not supposed. I mean, if the average income is 1,500, I don't think.
Yeah, a lot of people live off 1,100 or something like that.
Yeah. So, if there's an income of 1,000, say, you're not supposed to charge more than 300 for rent. Everything beyond that is an abuse. Rent itself is a fucking abuse. What do you need more than one home for? If you don't need that house, you just let it go. Give it away to someone who needs it. Fuck that shit. Fuck that noise. But I hear you. Like, if we need to live in this fucking system, at least this system be a little bit more balanced. Because landlords are fucking leeches. They do nothing. They sit on their ass because they have a fucking extra house, and they sit on their ass and they charge you for using that house. It's like, fuck that shit. Yeah. Fuck that noise. I mean,
I mean, you can see it really nicely in the example of Berlin. When I was in the late 90s in Berlin, it was really cheap to live there. But now the rents there are so high. And Vienna, it's the same. I mean, Vienna over the last 10 years or so had a gain of about over 200,000 people more. So the rents, they rose. It's really insane.
Fucking parasites, man. They're fucking parasites. Fuck those people. I mean, really. I mean,
And
get a
also
fucking job.
and also Vienna is one of the cities with the biggest public housing in whole of Europe, maybe in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, because here in Spain it's the other way around. We're probably the most fucked up in terms of public housing country, and it's mostly because of the city that I live in here. Because this city, Madrid, has been punished by right wing governments for decades on, and so right now it's a hellish right wing landscape. From absolute, it's a nightmare landscape right now. I want to leave this city. I want to leave it for good. I want to go get bored, man, out in the countryside.
I mean, here in Austria, without Vienna, the big city, it would be a whole right-wing country. But Vienna is still the stronghold of the Social Democrats, and they always have a Social Democrat mayor, and the Austrian People's Party, and the far right is quite small in Vienna. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the problems of our countries is that the countryside and the big cities are absolutely opposite universes. And most of the, because I think, from what I observed, is like a little town. They like to have a right-wing type of government or mayor, because the right-wing mayor happens to be a guy or a woman or whatever, with a person with some means, who is nice to the rest of the people, so they vote that brand. And they confuse that brand in the local that kind of works for them because they're all friends and they don't care. And they confuse that brand with the national brand, in which there are a bunch of absolute ghouls looking to do a lot of harm. And they mix one thing with the other. And so when our electoral systems are so crooked in a way that a vote from someone in a population of 7,000 has more weight than a vote in a city of several million people, because they kind of compensate one thing for the other, and they count it for districts and whatnot. So in the end, they're making all those people who live in a parallel reality politically, and those people's votes count more than people who live in the cities, who are looking at I'm not going to say the big picture, but they look at the national brand of politics, which acts more in the big cities, and they know what the mainstream branch of those political parties want to do for real. Yeah. And they conflate one thing with the other, and then we pay the price big time. I don't know. I think we've gone a little bit off topic, but fuck it, I think this conversation is pretty good. I want to read Nicole's comment, because she put like a lot of thought into this, and I haven't read it because I'm too far from the screen. I think one of the things we need, along with the diversity of tactics, is to recognize that we can fail and try to be okay with that. Yeah, absolutely. But we also struggle because, like, our resource access is so minimal. It's hard not to fear losing the resources to something that doesn't work. Yeah, of course, that fear is going to be there. But trial and error, it's a thing that we say too little in political circles. It's like everybody's so enthusiastic with their whatever they found out in their theory book, that they want to sell it as truth. They want to be convinced and say, this is the way for everybody, all the time, ever, always. And it's like, yeah, I understand your enthusiasm, but at the same time, it's not that it's going to be the universal solution, but it's definitely something worth trying. But there's a difference there, right? In the absolutes and the relatives. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, trial and error it's
part of life,
of
right?
Course.
Yeah,
it's part of life. Yeah. the only thing we on the left have to be aware of is that every time we are wrong, the media will blow it up. And that's the problem I mentioned before. If the right does something that's bad or fucks up with anything, yeah, it's just another day. But
yeah, because they work for the same people as the media, right? So they get forgiven. Yeah. So I hear you so much. But the media is going to play against us, against our interests always, because the media is owned by rich ghouls who are on the side of the other rich ghouls. Sometimes even they're like the same rich ghouls who want to exploit us to oblivion, to make us slaves. One of the things, one of the comments that
rich ghouls, or one of the biggest rich ghouls, like quite some media here in Austria is owned by the Catholic Church.
Yeah, of course, the Catholic Church wants to be entangled with power. They love power. They're not interested in spirituality. They want fucking power because it's what they inherited from the Middle Ages in Europe. Most of the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church in some countries, but the mainstream, the Church from Rome which was the Catholic one, are the ones who were historically used to influence kings and nobility around Europe. So,
and they always had a huge problem with distancing themselves from the fascists. I mean, more than often enough, they work together with the fascists.
Yeah, exactly. In Spain, Spain is a clear example. The Francoist regime was upped by the church, and one of the things that the fasci recriminate during the quote-unquote Spanish Civil War, there was actually an extermination war carried on against the Spanish people after a failed coup d'etat by the fascists. Was that they killed many priests in villages. That the leftist mob killed a lot of priests who were innocent. It is like those motherfuckers were not innocent. They were for the fascists all the time, and they're absolute, the organization, and of course they're gonna come up with an anecdote, Andy, about that this one priest who was a really good person who took a bullet or whatever, because they had like most of the stuff that happened in mostly in small villages during the Spanish extermination war that the fascists carried on after the failed coup d'etat. It was, beefs that people they were holding grudges forever in smaller villages, and most of the time, of course, the fucking priest was meddling, but the church as an institution was enabling, hovering, and helping the fascists with all the resources. They were giving it all they had, and they want power. They want to be entangled with power. I'm always going to say, be a religious person as much as you want. I had like a ton of conversations like with Damon Garcia, and, who's an awesome comrade, who is for the theology of liberation and so on, which are fantastic things. But the institution, is absolutely separated from mysticism, from spirituality completely. They're about manipulation, and they're about grabbing power. They really move in Spain. The Catholic Church is one of the biggest tenants, one of the biggest owners of real estate in the country. They have so much real estate, and because there was a law from the Franco era that kept going on after the quote unquote transition, which was actually an example of absolute continuism. And during the Franco era, they picked up this. They had this law in which any unclaimed property that could be used for the church, their church were able to claim it and have it without any payment or anything. They just claim it. It's mine now. Done and done. Property of the church. The church, which is
free, and I guess they also not paying taxes or anything like that.
Exactly. That was where I was going to right now, which is also exempt from taxes. They don't pay property taxes on any of their buildings. So most of the time, they exploit those buildings. They rent them. They use them for nefarious purposes, and they get away with it because they're protected by the law. They're just like a fucking piece of shit king who, there's this game in, I think it's Minecraft or something, in which you get to blow up a king with a big ass bomb. I think ETA tried a couple of times, and it sucks that they didn't succeed.
I mean, with the Catholic Church, it's the same like with the police. You have this one or two nice priests. Of course, they exist. Like there are nice policemen who exist, but the institution itself is bad.
Yeah, 1312 all the way. But yeah, I want to address other message from Nicole, who types these super long messages because she's so smart.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Nicole is an absolute beast. We should bring her on someday. You should come to the show one day, okay? I have so many thoughts about the rural thing. As a formerly Euro-USian, knowing that the rural Slovaks I've met, or rural Slovaks who moved from bigger cities to bigger cities like Bratislava, parallel to my experiences. I can type them without writing a novel. And that was the long-ass comment. So we need to talk about, rural life and everything. I'm a city, I'm a absolute city, I'm a city monster. I don't know much about the rural media. I had some experiences working with them. They're fantastic people. They have a way better life quality than in the cities, to be honest. Because you work less, you don't pay. People in smaller towns, they usually have their own house, which they paid super cheap, and they keep all their wages for themselves. I mean, it's that. And going back to Carlos Taibo, it's something, you're a country mouse. I'm a city raccoon. Wait, are you city dwelling or countryside? You said you were living in a small village, that it gets you bored to death, right?
I think here in Austria, it's the maybe because the country is so small, but the differences are not that big when it comes to amount of work and all that. So it's only that on the countryside, people are less confronted with immigrants and all that. So there are living immigrants on the countryside, of course, yeah. But on the countryside, it's still possible, to live more in your own little world than it's in the city. And I guess that has a lot to do with the differences in perception of the whole political thing and all that.
Yeah, I hear you. It is weird. I mean, one of the problems that I found with little towns is transportation. Everything is like super dependent on cars. Like
absolutely on the countryside you need a car.
Yeah, which sucks. They should be like very efficient, very simple public transportation.
I don't have a car, and I'm lucky that at least for I'm living on the countryside, I'm living near a train station. That's the main route to the city and all that. So every hour there's a train going, and it's doable. But if you live a little bit aside from the train tracks and so, then you need a car. Otherwise, it's not working. And not to forget, a car is a big cost factor.
A big what?
A big cost factor. It costs money.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. Definitely, it is. Some people say it's almost like having a baby. You got to pay like a lot of circulation taxes, gas, and they break down all the time, and they're a pain in the ass, right?
Yeah, especially if you don't have much money, what you buy a used car.
Yeah.
And used cars, of course, they more often break down. So it's
But cars are a little bit designed like that, right? Cars are designed to have a lot of problems over time, so you spend a lot of money in pieces and body shops and whatever.
That and it's not all about that, but it's because of the lower emissions and so we all want from the cars to have, they get more and more complex. So the crazy thing is that an electric car in the end is much cheaper, not cheaper, but much easier to build than a normal gas-driven car.
Yeah, so there's something I thought about, making like a co-op about making customized electric cars. You can make them as simple and as cheap as you want them, and then build up and make more commodity, more comfortable parts or whatever. And I thought about making a co-op that would make like these super easy and simple. Even converting old cars into electrics. That would be awesome, but one can dream. I don't have the connections. I don't know any engineers or whatever. But the concept, having like a basic frame that would be cheap as fuck that anybody could have. But electric cars are fine, but I'm all for collective transport, to be honest. Having now train lines and bus lines and everything that go on.
Because if you build a car, you have to go through the crash test and all. I mean, it has to be safe and all that.
Yeah, of course. But good brakes, good frame, up to specs. Get an engineer and get the simplest, easiest engine that wouldn't break, that would last you forever. That if something breaks, you can easily change it and it's cheap. Something like that. Because I think one of the traps of gas-powered cars are that they're super complicated. They had like a lot of failure points, and it's not an accident. I think it's by design. Yeah, they get more and more complicated because of what you said, the regulations and the gas emissions and whatnot.
And what I think is really funny is all those Elon Musk stands. If Elon Musk is streaming about his Hyperloop and all that, and a lot of people point out that with his plans of transportation, that a normal tube or something like that would be much better.
Yeah.
But what they don't get is Elon Musk isn't making all these things for us.
Yeah.
He's not making that for us, the poor people. He's making that for the rich people. And so if it's expensive to ride and to build, it's more of an advantage in his view, because they want all the tunnels underneath the cities, and where you ride in these little cells where only 3 or 4 people fit into. Yeah. That's what the rich want, so that they don't have to be on public transportation with us, the poor.
Yeah, of course. They don't give a fuck about us. I mean, they get the sweet public money, from their big contractors and whatever, their friends. And but they don't give a fuck about us. And one of the things that really bugs me with Elon Musk is like he has this public image as he's like the stable genius, the man of the future, the modern Tony Stark or whatever. No, he's a fucking salesman. He's a fucking salesman selling you bogus projects. Pretending you're a genius doesn't make you someone who is smart. The best things, the most engineered and the most modern and the most progressive things that can happen, they're collective creations made by groups of people interacting with each other and improving on a project that they decide to go together. Not this big personality bullshit. The guy doesn't have an engineering degree. He's just a fucking salesman. So let's stop with the visionary bullshit, because that's all a marketing shill. It's absolute.
He employs all the smart people. That's all he does. Yeah.
Yeah, Edison Musk equals Edison with more colonialism, says Midnerd. So true.
Yeah, I mean his money is coming from the South African apartheid states. From the money he started with, he got from his family.
Yeah, diamond mines and whatever.
Yeah.
Edison 2.0 says Renegade Incos. Definitely. I mean, we need to really counter this bullshit narrative that Elon Musk is a genius or a visionary or something. Just a fucking salesman, like fucking Steve Jobs. Just a fucking salesman who have, these absolute abhorrent ideologies. They support these abhorrent ideologies of the boss commands and the employee obeys. It's like bullshit. It's absolute bullshit.
I mean, if you look at the iPhone and that when that came to markets, without socialism it wouldn't have been possible, because all the
components,
the components that went into it, it all was funded
Public
by
money.
the public, you
Yeah.
know, and by the military, which also is a form of socialism because the taxpayer pays for it. So
It's planned economy.
yeah,
Planned economy of killing people and finding the most useful technologies for killing people. And at some point, I think that back in the day, wars were fought in a way that, you had one army and then the other army, and they shot at each other, and whoever shot more people and killed more people won the war and won the government. But at some point, the rules changed, so it was okay to kill civilians. So
yeah. I mean, even in the beginning, it was that the king or whatever, he was riding into the battle himself. I mean, that was something different. But now you have those statesmen, and they order their military to fight some war, and they sit in the one nice bureau or whatever. It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, now they bomb you with a fucking joystick, with a fucking drone. It's ridiculous. It's not about wars between nations anymore. It's the global rich against the global poor. And we're all fucked because they have all the guns. Well, if we let them, that is, because one of the things that those rich ghouls, they have the armies, but the armies are still operated by people who are absolutely brainwashed into obeying whatever those rich ghouls do. What happens when we deprogram the armies, when we deprogram their power, when we get the hard power ourselves, the people, and say, stop this bullshit, stop the killing, stop, let's fix our societies and let's make them work towards people living in peace and harmony and living decent lives that are worth being lived, not like the bullshit dystopian shit that we're living right now, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, they like countries like the US, but also they overestimate a little bit their power, because you could have seen it in the Vietnam War. I mean, the big US power, but still Vietnam managed to win the war in the end, yeah. For being it under really great losses, and you can see it now in Afghanistan. And so I'm not a fan of the Taliban or anything like that, but this big technological high-powered US military, but the Taliban, they still a force there, and as soon as the Americans went out of Afghanistan, you can be sure that the Taliban will take over again. So
it's like fascist A says fascist B. Let's stage a war. Let's do some saber rattling. And then, they stage the war. They kill a ton of civilians. And then, they continue business as usual, extracting resources to favor the rich and fuck the poor over. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It is something that we all need to push against. This new form of fascism, which is beyond, let's say, the regular political fascism, but is actually like a new feudalism, a new... it's a struggle for power, where power is not the means but the objective, the thing to grab, absolute power against us. And when they're screwing us up, when they're really making us suffer, it's when they are enjoying their addiction to power, which is not even an objective as an objective, something that you search for rationally or intentionally. It's become like an addiction. By the way, welcome, Rendis. But yeah, it's an addiction to power, so it's all...
Yeah, and of course, it's all fueled by a lot of money behind it. The military industrial complex. A lot of people get rich by wars.
Yeah, but I wouldn't stop at money. I would say it's power. By the way, hola, Johnny Prophet. So I wouldn't stop at money. Money is like one of their power operations. I think it's all about power, about having people.
I think that's
subdued.
Because in a capitalist system, money always is power.
Kind of. It's I see money more as a tool, and I think power is also influence. Is also resources which are not measured in money. Even though they make a ton of money, it's control. It's all about, But yeah, money is a very effective way of exerting power on us, on the proles, on we the serfs. But I would say there's more to it. I would say it's a lot about control. It's a lot about dominion. It's a lot about oppression for the pleasure of oppressing us. So I mean, the question begs the question, right? What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to respond? Are we going to keep taking it? Because I think there's been a very cold and silent war against the working class and the poor people and the oppressed people worldwide. But the thing is, we haven't been fighting it. It's all one-sided that is fighting, which is the rich and the powerful, and the most powerful people in the world are really fighting, to keep us subdued and more punished. It's something that I suspect is more of an impulse of extraction for the sake of extraction, of punishment for the sake of punishment, than an actual, a plan or master plan or whatever. It's more of a very, very ideological death cult that is around us, and we need to stop it. So,
the big question to me is where is the threshold for the working class, especially here in the West, when they say enough is enough?
Yeah.
We haven't reached the point yet, but
I don't think we'll ever reach it. I think one of the things when they manufacture consent is like they make it into something that is normal. Like we all have tacitly accepted that a boss is allowed to extract surplus value from you every month if you are lucky enough to have work, to have an employment. That your employer is allowed to take what's yours. That your landlord is allowed to extract power from you. We have accepted it socially. That makes us tired. That makes us angry. But we don't know what are we angry at. And I think that's one of the things that really...
and one of the big problems here also is it's a slow process. It doesn't get... one day it's great, and the next day it's really, really bad. No, it's a slow process. It gets worse bit by bit, and so people get used to it.
It's like that thing they say that the way to boil a frog by heating up the water a little bit more at a time, right? By the way, don't boil frogs. Respect frogs. We love frogs here. We love all non-human animals here. Okay. But yeah, I think it's a way of manufacturing consent and giving it to but I don't think I suspect there's nobody at the wheel. I think this is like an ideology that's been boiling, that's been forming itself about how they
self-fulfilling prophecy somehow. It got into motion, and now it's spinning on its own.
Oh, I didn't know the boiling frog was a myth. But yeah, I want to think it's all a paper tiger in a way. Like we're doing this to ourselves. We're giving them power because we're willing to give them power. I want to think it's of course the armies are real, but who's going to operate, who's going to operate those things? Who's going to operate that joystick of that? Who's going to maintain those drones? Who's going to do the maintenance? Who's going to...
I mean, that this whole system is built on sand, I think you can really nicely see at the moment at this COVID crisis, because there's only a little disturbance and the whole capitalist system, it's going wild.
Yeah, I think more and more people are questioning right now the validity of capitalism as a system of production. But I don't think it's just a system of production. I think there's a supporting ideology there that is deeply ingrained in us that we need to really deconstruct at so many levels. That's where intersectionalism comes in, that there are so many things that we need to undo. I always put this metaphor that intersectionalism is like trying to lift up a fallen tree, and pulling it by the branches. Everybody picks up a branch, and we all pull many different branches so we can lift the whole weight of the whole tree, right? So I like to approach intersectionalism not as the analysis, which is different, but as the way to set solutions, to give solutions, to make less of a mess this thing that we're in right now, which is absolutely a mess. It's like, how do we make this thing better, right? So I guess many of us together, one at a time, at what everyone is better at doing, at what everybody understands best, without throwing shade at what everybody else is doing, without getting in the way of what everybody else is doing, is a good start. You know, and denying one of the many branches that we need to lift from this metaphoric tree would be the ideological one, the justifying ideology that say that these people are powerful because they deserve to be powerful, and say they don't deserve to be powerful and their power is not that real. Like the same as fucking Elon Musk is not an engineer or you know, is not a genius or whatever, just a salesman. I would say, you know, people who work for Tesla Technologies, sabotage. And people who work in the army, sabotage. People who work in the government, sabotage. And deny the power that these figures are supposed to have. And say these people are not really that smart, they're not really that important, they're not really that good. By the way, hello everybody who's just come right now. Yeah, good people. Welcome.
I think one of and here we are at the beginning somehow, one of the really big problems is the lack of class consciousness. Because like here in Austria, like mentioned before with the 12-hour workday, that's a problem of class consciousness, you know? It's and I think we have to do more propaganda. What else would help? I don't know, because people need more class consciousness again.
Yeah, definitely. But just, you know, class is one of the many vectors that we need to be aware of. I think, you know, class analysis is super important, but in a way, I think it's already antiquated. We're not in the factories of the 19th century. And by the way, Gotha bomb, you apologize to Johnny. What's the fuck off for? It's not necessary, okay? I won't ban you if you know. So, sorry.
I personally see the class struggle more as if you work for your money or if you are letting your money work or living off property or something like that. So it's a more modern form of class consciousness, you know, and of class theory.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Just, you know, we're not at that point anymore. We're a little bit past that, even when that's super important yet. But right now, the ideology that is justifying all this bullshit is one of the vectors that we need to attack. Again, not excluding any of these, you know, different ways to fight the power, right? Like,
absolutely, because it's all intertwined, you know. Racism plays into it, and all those other things, sexism, it all has to do with it.
Yeah, it's like they have us fighting each other. They put us in little boxes, and they have us fight each other. I see like the sad thing of Twitter, for instance, where everybody's like, you know, everybody's like fighting each other over absolutely misunderstanding each other, and everybody's super, you know, on fight mode all the time. And it's like, why don't you turn it around? Why don't you be all wholesome on Twitter? Because that's something that you can choose to do voluntarily. Because Twitter is not going to reward you for it. Fuck their reward system. Turn it around, motherfucker. Like,
I mean, I can understand it if ideologies clash, and so, you know, if you're talking to an ANCAP or something, that you're not really in a friendly conversation and all that. But the whole leftist infighting, that really should stop. That's really bad.
Yeah, between leftists, and it's a
Yeah.
performance because it's in public. Everybody's gonna see it, so everybody wants to look smart or whatever. And it's like, don't look smart. Look generous. Look positive. If you want to look something, if you want to perform something, perform mutual aid, perform solidarity, which is a good thing to perform. In this performative world of the online discourse, because we cannot be we cannot be like these we cannot pretend we're the smartest people in the world.
And
nobody is.
Absolutely. And we have to make allies. And here I again have to mention both the fifth column. Like you said, allies are people, if you imagine a bus, you're on a bus, right? And an ally of yours, maybe he gets in on the bus on some station, and maybe he leaves the bus on a certain station. You don't have to have the same end goal, but if there's a part of the whole travel you can travel together, then do it. And that's really important, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I understand, Elevoir, you're saying that sexism is not linked to the working class directly, but I think it's part of the justifying ideologies that create like those hierarchies that are absolutely, they're justification for the other hierarchies, I would say. What do you think?
Yeah, it's complicated. Of course, if you give Illois wrote 2,000 euros, then these problems will not go away immediately. But in daily life, if you look at job chances and all that, sexism plays a big role.
Yeah, I would say so. It's never, nothing is like direct. Nothing is one consequence of the other directly. Things play like in a little bit more of a subtle way, right?
I mean, I saw on Twitter yesterday when it was that Switzerland, the voting right for women is only 50 years old. It only came in 1971, so that's really bad.
It is bad. By the way, thank you to the moderators for dealing with I think they were even bots. I don't think they were actually real people. They were saying bullshit. Sorry about that. We got people contaminating the chat. Anyway, I think I think we've been going on for a while. What do you think if we wrap this one up so far?
I'm fine with it.
Cool, good people. Let's remind everyone you're on Twitter right now at IlSinistero, right?
At IlSinistero, all in one word, yes. And like I talked with Xavi, that if you liked it, this whole conversation, maybe we do it again in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, maybe on another topic. If you have a topic to suggest,
and then we'll go happily off topic as usual.
Yeah,
which is cool. It's absolutely cool. That's who we are. Okay, it doesn't make it less interesting.
Yeah, the whole fascism thing was meant to be the base topic, and then we freely talk about whatever comes to our minds, and so yeah. But if people have any ideas for topics, they can feel free to
hit us up on Twitter.
Message me on Twitter.
Yeah, hit us up on Twitter. Add us or hit us a DM or whatever. So yeah, thank you so much everybody for coming. I'm gonna stop the recording right now, and